3 alien sheriffs raided my town, then raided me all night. The arrival. The Dust Devils were dancing outside Myra Chen's workshop when the shuttle descended through Dustfall's hazy amber sky. She didn't look up from the atmospheric processor she was calibrating until the engine's roar shook her tools from their magnetic strips. Through the corrugated metal wall, she heard boots hitting packed earth. 3 pairs. Heavy. Official. Myra's stomach dropped. She knew that sound. The door exploded inward without warning. Plasma cutters made short work of the reinforced lock she'd installed last season. 3 figures filled the doorway, backlit by Dustfall's twin suns, their silhouettes radiating authority and barely contained violence. Myra Chen, you're under arrest for sabotage of corporate infrastructure and endangerment of colony populations. The voice belonged to the tallest figure, a woman whose crimson scales caught the light like molten copper. Marshal Commander Zara Thorne stepped forward, her amber eyes fixed on Myra with predatory focus. Behind her came Deputy Kane Meridian, his obsidian skin marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with his heartbeat. He moved with liquid grace, positioning himself to cut off the back exit Myra hadn't even considered using. The third marshal said nothing. Scout Lissa Rain simply flowed into the space, her emerald form almost serpentine, tendrils drifting around her shoulders like underwater plants. Her silver eyes assessed everything, cataloging, calculating. There's been a mistake, Myra managed, raising her grease-stained hands. I didn't. Compliance restraints, Zara ordered. Kane moved before Myra could finish her sentence, producing magnetic cuffs that hummed to life around her wrists. The metal was warm from his touch. You're accused of corrupting 17 atmospheric processors across the Northern Territories, Kane said, his voice unexpectedly gentle for someone delivering charges that could mean execution. Endangering 4,000 colonists. I fixed those processors. Myra's voice cracked with desperation. Someone sabotaged them. I spent 3 weeks repairing. Evidence room, Zara cut her off, gesturing to Kane and Lissa. Strip it. Everything. The marshals moved through her workshop like a coordinated storm, but Myra noticed something odd. They weren't destroying anything. Kane carefully photographed each item before moving it. Lissa's tendrils handled Myra's tools with unexpected reverence. These weren't raiders. They were hunters. And somehow, Myra had become their prey. The truth unveiled. The interrogation room above the colony security station smelled like recycled air and old coffee. Myra sat with her bound wrists resting on the scarred metal table while Zara paced like a caged predator. Kane stood by the door, his luminescent markings pulsing a steady blue that Myra was beginning to recognize as his version of calm. Lissa had draped herself across a chair in the corner, watching everything with those unsettling silver eyes. Walk me through it again, Zara demanded. The processors. All 17. Myra took a breath, forcing down her frustration. 3 weeks ago, I got an anonymous distress call. The northern settlement's atmospheric readings were critical. When I arrived, someone had corrupted the calibration algorithms. The processors were outputting toxic levels of sulfur dioxide instead of breathable air. And you just happened to know how to fix military-grade equipment. Kane's voice held suspicion but also curiosity. I designed the damn things, Myra snapped. Before I left Earth. Before Alios Corporation bought out my contracts and buried my name in their patent filings. Silence fell like a physical weight. Zara stopped pacing. Lissa's tendrils went still. Explain, Zara said quietly, dangerously. So Myra did. She explained how she developed the processor technology, how Alios had stolen her designs, how she'd fled to the outer colonies to escape their lawyers. How she'd spent 5 years living quietly in Dustfall, fixing equipment for food and shelter, wanting nothing but peace. Kane pulled up a holographic display, his fingers dancing through data streams. The sabotage code, it has Alios Corporation encryption signatures. That's impossible, Zara moved closer to examine the data. They filed the criminal complaint against her. Because I fixed what they broke, Myra said bitterly. They needed someone to blame. A nobody terraformer with no resources to fight back? Perfect scapegoat. Lissa finally spoke, her voice like wind chimes. The processors you repaired. Show us your work logs. Myra directed them to her personal files. For 20 minutes, the three marshals reviewed her documentation in silence. Every repair meticulously recorded. Every fix tagged with timestamps and biometric verification. The evidence was irrefutable. Zara's scales flushed darker, a wash of what Myra would later learn was shame. Kane's markings shifted to purple, distress coloring every line. Lissa's tendrils coiled tight against her neck. We chased you across 6 sectors, Kane said softly. We believed you were a monster. You saved 4,000 lives, Lissa added, and we treated you like a criminal. Zara turned away, her broad shoulders rigid. When she spoke again, her voice was rough. Formal charges are voided. We'll have the real saboteur in custody within hours. So I can go? Myra asked, not quite believing it. No, all three marshals said simultaneously. Myra's heart lurched. But you just said. Alios Corporation tried to frame you for corporate terrorism. Zara turned back, her amber eyes blazing with something that wasn't quite anger. They have resources, connections, hired guns. You think we can just let you walk back to your workshop and hope they don't send someone to silence you permanently? Protective custody, Kane said, but the way he was looking at Myra made her skin warm. Until we can guarantee your safety. The colony in has rooms, Lissa suggested, her silver eyes glinting with something Myra couldn't quite name. Private. Secure. Myra should have argued. Should have insisted on her independence. But something in the way the three marshals were watching her, like she was precious instead of troublesome, made her nod. Fine, she whispered. Protective custody. She didn't see the look the three marshals exchanged. Didn't notice how Zara's claws flexed, how Kane's markings brightened, how Lissa's tendrils reached toward her before pulling back. They'd come to Dustfall hunting a criminal. They'd found something far more dangerous instead. Protective custody. The Dustfall Inn had seen better decades. The brass fixtures were tarnished, the wooden floors creaked with every step, and the whole building smelled faintly of desert sage and something sweetly alcoholic from the bar below. But the room the marshals secured on the top floor was surprisingly spacious, with a bed large enough for 3 or 4 occupants and windows that overlooked the canyon lands beyond the colony. Myra stood uncertainly by the door while Zara swept the room for surveillance devices. Kane secured the entrances, and Lissa somehow produced a bottle of amber liquid that definitely wasn't colony standard rations. You don't have to stay all 3 of you, Myra said, acutely aware of how small the room suddenly felt. I'm sure 1 guard would be sufficient. Protocol requires a full detail for high-value witnesses, Zara said, but she wouldn't meet Myra's eyes. High value, Myra repeated with a laugh that held no humor. Yesterday I was a terrorist. Today I'm high value. What will I be tomorrow? Alive, Kane said firmly. That's all that matters. Lissa poured 4 glasses of the amber liquid, her movements fluid and graceful. Drink. You've had a terrible day. Myra accepted the glass because refusing felt impossible. The liquid burned pleasantly going down, warmth spreading through her chest and loosening the knot of tension between her shoulders. I owe you an apology, Zara said abruptly. She'd stopped her security sweep and now stood directly in front of Myra, close enough that Myra could see the intricate pattern of her scales, each one edged in gold. We should have investigated more thoroughly before the raid. We should have questioned the evidence. We should have. You were doing your job, Myra interrupted gently. You didn't know. That's not an excuse. Zara's voice was rough with emotion. We put hands on you. We terrified you. We treated you like someone dangerous. Myra set down her glass and surprised herself by reaching out, her fingers hovering near Zara's arm. Maybe that's not entirely wrong. Zara's amber eyes locked onto hers. What do you mean? I mean. Myra's breath caught. I mean you're all looking at me like I'm something breakable and precious, and I don't know what to do with that. Kane moved closer, drawn by the electricity suddenly crackling in the air. His bioluminescent markings were shifting through colors Myra had never seen, purples, and golds, and something almost pink. "Maybe you don't have to do anything," he said quietly. "Maybe you just let us show you." "Show me what?" Myra whispered. Lissa's tendrils brushed Myra's shoulder, feather-light and seeking permission. "That we see you. Not a target. Not a witness. You." The air felt too thick to breathe. Myra's pulse hammered in her throat. She should step back, re-establish professional boundaries. Remember, these were officers of the law and she was under their protection. Instead, she leaned into Lissa's touch. "This is a terrible idea," Myra breathed. "Probably," Zara agreed, but her hand found Myra's waist, warm and careful and anchoring. Nights of discovery. The first kiss was Zara's. Fierce and claiming, her scaled lips surprisingly soft against Myra's mouth. She tasted like cinnamon and something electric, and when she pulled back, her amber eyes were molten with want and wonder. "Tell us to stop," Zara whispered against Myra's lips. "Tell us this isn't what you want." Myra's answer was to pull her back, fingers threading through the ridge of scales along Zara's jaw. The marshal made a sound low in her throat, somewhere between a growl and a purr, and suddenly Kane was there too, his hands gentle on Myra's shoulders, turning her so he could capture her mouth with his own. Kane kissed like he was memorizing scripture. Slow, reverent, his luminescent markings blazing brilliant gold against his obsidian skin. Myra could feel the warmth radiating from him, could taste something sweet on his tongue like honey and starlight. Lissa's tendrils wound through Myra's hair, tilting her head back so the emerald marshal could press kisses along her throat. Each touch sent sparks racing down Myra's spine. Lissa's voice hummed against her skin. "So beautiful. So brave. We don't deserve you." "You don't get to decide that," Myra managed, her voice shaking. "Maybe I want you anyway." The words unlocked something. Zara's hands mapped the curves of Myra's body with possessive care. Kane's fingers found the fastening of her work shirt, each button released with patient deliberation. Lissa's tendrils wrapped around Myra's wrists, not restraining but anchoring, promising safety even in surrender. They moved to the bed as one tangled entity. Someone dimmed the lights. The amber suns were setting beyond the window, painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. Zara showed Myra what it meant to be claimed by fire, her passion burning away every doubt Myra had ever harbored about her own worthiness. Her scaled body was warm everywhere it touched, her strength tempered by unexpected tenderness. She whispered words in her own language, syllables that sounded like prayers. Kane taught Myra the poetry of gentleness. His hands worshipped every inch of exposed skin, his mouth following the path his fingers traced. His bioluminescence painted constellations across Myra's body in the darkness. He'd spent his life being the strong one, the dependable one. With Myra, he finally allowed himself to be vulnerable, to give without expecting anything in return. Lissa was playful silk and liquid grace. Her tendrils explored with curious affection, finding places that made Myra gasp and arch. She laughed like music when Myra tried to reciprocate, guiding her hands to sensitive spots along her emerald skin. "There," she breathed. "Just like that. Perfect." The night dissolved into sensation and discovery. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's tells. Myra discovered that Zara's scales flushed darker with arousal, that Kane's markings shifted to rose gold when overwhelmed with pleasure, that Lissa's tendrils trembled when she was close to release. Between moments of passion came unexpected tenderness. Kane fetching water for everyone. Zara pulling a blanket over them when the desert night turned cold. Lissa braiding her tendrils through Myra's hair while they caught their breath. "I didn't know it could be like this," Myra whispered into the darkness, nestled between warm bodies. "I've been alone so long." "Not anymore," Zara murmured, her arm heavy and possessive across Myra's waist. "Never again," Kane promised, his fingers laced with hers. Lissa's answer was a contented hum, her tendrils tightening just slightly. "You're ours now. We're yours. That's how this works." Dawn came too quickly. Then another dusk. Then another dawn. The marshals should have returned to their ship, should have filed reports and moved on to their next assignment. Instead, they sent terse messages to headquarters. "Witness requires extended protection. Situation complex. Request additional time. The colony gossiped. Naturally. 3 galactic marshals and the quiet terraformer, holed up in the inn for days. But when anyone asked, all 4 would emerge for meals or supplies, and the way they moved together, the way they looked at each other, silenced most speculation. This wasn't scandal. This was something rare and precious taking root in unlikely soil. On the 5th night, as they lay tangled together in the too small bed, Myra finally asked the question that had been haunting her. What happens when headquarters calls you back? The 3 marshals exchanged looks. Zara spoke first. We request permanent reassignment. This colony needs protection, Kane added. Alios Corporation won't give up easily. And we need you, Lissa finished simply. So we stay. You can't just abandon your careers, Myra protested. You're the Galactic Marshal Service's best team. They won't accept. They'll accept it, Zara said firmly. Because we're invoking bonding rights. Myra's breath caught. Bonding rights. An ancient law, Kane explained gently. When marshals find their chosen mates, they can request reassignment to protect their bond. It's rarely used, but it's ironclad. You're claiming me. Myra's voice was small, disbelieving. If you'll have us, Lissa said. All of us. Myra looked at each of them in turn. Zara's fierce devotion. Kane's steady strength. Lissa's playful wisdom. 3 beings who had crashed into her life as enemies and become something infinitely more precious. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll have you. The kiss they shared tasted like promise and homecoming and the beginning of everything. A new beginning. The message from Galactic Marshal Service Headquarters arrived 2 weeks later. Marshal Commander Zara Thorne stood in Myra's workshop, now significantly upgraded with proper security and new equipment, reading the official response on her datapad. Kane and Lissa flanked her, while Myra worked on calibrating a new atmospheric processor for the southern settlements. Well? Myra asked, not looking up from her work though her hands had gone still. Zara's scaled face broke into a rare, brilliant smile. Request approved. Effective immediately, Strike Team Thorne is permanently reassigned to Dustfall Colony and surrounding territories. We're authorized to establish a regional marshal office. Myra's wrench clattered to the floor. They actually approved it. Bonding rights are sacred, Kane said, moving to wrap his arms around Myra from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Even headquarters won't violate them. Besides, they noted that Dustfall has become strategically important after the Alios Corporation scandal. Having a martial presence here makes sense. Convenient how that worked out, Lissa added with a knowing smile, her tendrils reaching out to caress Myra's cheek. The truth was more complex than any of them acknowledged. The investigation into Alios Corporation had uncovered widespread corruption, illegal weapons trafficking, and exploitation of colony workers. Myra's framing had been just one thread in a massive conspiracy. The executives responsible were now facing tribunal, and the corporation itself was being dismantled. Myra's testimony had been crucial. But more than that, her technology, her designs for the atmospheric processors, were being recognized. The Galactic Council had offered her a position, full patent restoration, wealth beyond her imagining. She'd turned it all down. I have everything I need right here, she told them, and she'd meant it. The months that followed fell into a rhythm more precious than any Myra had known. Mornings meant work, Myra in her workshop while the marshals coordinated regional security. Afternoons often brought them together for meals at the inn, now renovated and renamed the Marshal's Rest. Evenings were for the colony, the 4 of them becoming fixtures at community gatherings, settling disputes, helping families, becoming part of Dustfall's fabric. Nights belonged to the 4 of them alone. The bedroom above the workshop that they now shared was filled with the evidence of their merged lives. Zara's martial coat hung beside Myra's work coveralls. Kane's collection of old Earth books shared shelf space with Lissa's meditation crystals. The bed, custom-made by the colony's carpenter and reinforced to handle 4 occupants, wore sheets in colors that pleased them all. 6 months after the Marshal's arrival, Dustfall held its first bonding ceremony. The 4 of them stood before the colony, hands joined, while the magistrate spoke words about partnership and choosing and love that transcend species and circumstance. Zara's scales gleamed like copper fire in the setting suns. Cain's markings blazed with colors that had no earth names. Lissa's tendrils were woven with desert flowers. And Myra, wearing a dress the color of Dustfall's amber sky, finally looked like someone who believed she deserved happiness. "I came here to hide," Myra said during her vows. "I thought I wanted to be invisible, to be safe, to be forgotten. But you three taught me that being seen, truly seen, is the greatest gift. You taught me that I don't have to choose between safety and passion, between independence and belonging." "We came here hunting a ghost," Zara said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "We found the reason we were made marshals in the first place. Not to punish, but to protect. Not to take, but to cherish. Myra Chen, you are my home." "You showed us that strength isn't about being unbreakable," Cain added. "It's about choosing to trust, to open, to love even when it terrifies you. You're the bravest person I've ever known." "In all my travels," Lissa finished, "across all the worlds I've seen, I've never found anything as beautiful as this moment, this choice, this bond we're forging. You're my anchor. You're my sky. You're everything." The colony erupted in cheers. And later, much later, when the celebration had wound down and the four of them returned to their home, Zara whispered against Myra's ear, ready to be raided again. Myra's laugh was pure joy. "Always." They tumbled into bed together, a tangle of limbs and scales and skin and tendrils, passion and tenderness woven so tightly they couldn't tell where one ended and another began. This was love as verb, as choice, as daily practice. The marshals who had come to raid Dustfall had instead laid down their weapons and picked up something more powerful. They'd learned that justice without mercy is just violence in uniform. That protection means more than enforcement. That sometimes the greatest act of service is allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And Myra, who had spent years believing she deserved nothing but solitude and safety, had learned that she was worthy of being claimed, cherished, chosen every single day. Outside, the violet amber sky burned with another sunset. Inside, four hearts beat in rhythm, creating something new and eternal. Love, they'd learned, wasn't about conquest or surrender. It was about four people deciding, every morning and every night, that together was better than apart. Lessons. First, true justice requires listening, not just enforcement. The rush to judgment blinds us to truth, while patience and investigation reveal innocence hidden by others' lies. Second, vulnerability is the gateway to genuine connection. When we lower our defenses and allow ourselves to be truly seen, we create space for love to flourish beyond expectation. Third, home is not a place but the people who choose to see your worth when the world tries to render you invisible, who stay when leaving would be easier. Fourth, the greatest strength lies not in independence or solitude, but in the courage to accept love, to trust others with our hearts, and to believe we deserve tenderness.